What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Ruth Soukup. From 5 failed attempts at suicide to trying to numb the pain with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, to building a 7-figure business, and she's now one of the go-to experts in blogging. She's happily married with 2 children, and Ruth is absolutely killing life. In this episode, you're going to love everything that Ruth says, from her inspiring story to her blogging and business tips. Ruth is changing the world. If you told her years ago that she'd be a New York Times best-selling author and that she built a business so large that her husband could retire, she wouldn't believe you. But all that matters, guys, is the choices we make today, and that's why you're going to love this episode. Now, if you haven't yet, go grab your tickets to Growth Now Movement Live. There's going to be incredible people in that room, and of course, amazing speakers like Albie Manzo, Sarah Centrella, and so many more. This event will change your life, and I promise you that after this event, your life will level up. So go to gnmlive.com and get your tickets today before the price goes up. Now, without further ado, I give to you Ruth Soukup. Ruth, welcome to the Growth Now movement.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. This very rarely happens this way. Like my episode on your show released yesterday, and now here we are chatting, and then I'm actually going to fast forward this, and you're coming out next Tuesday. So you're coming out a week from today on my show from our conversation. Awesome. And so that very rarely happens. And I was like, let's take advantage of this opportunity. And I had a ton of fun on your show. And I told you before I hit record, I looked into your story, and this conversation is going to be amazing. Like, I didn't realize some of the stuff you've been through, what you've truly built. And I'm just really excited to dive in deep and share your journey with my audience and see who we can inspire today. But why don't we start with who is Ruth today, and what are you doing today?
Yeah, so I am the founder and CEO of my own company, which is Ruth Soukup Omnimedia. We recently just changed our name. It used to be Living While Spending Less Inc. So it's pretty exciting to have a new name for the new direction. But basically, it's an online media company, and I do lots of things underneath that umbrella. I've got a lifestyle website called Living While Spending Less. I have a course for online business owners called Elite Blog Academy, where I teach business owners how to become successful, profitable, and sustainable business owners. And I have a planner called the Living Well Planner, which teaches in a whole time management system that teaches you how to be more productive, get more done, manage your whole life, not just your schedule. And then finally, I have the Do It Scared podcast, which you had the pleasure of being on yesterday.
Yeah. So that's obviously a ton. So you do a lot today. But as an entrepreneur, the journey isn't always that simple. It isn't all of a sudden one day, hey, look, I'm starting all these things and everything works right away and so on and so forth. Like I often tell the story of my podcast, how I did it for 1.5 years before anybody even listened, So there's a lot of that journey. So how did the entrepreneurial side of things even start for you? Was that something at a young age, or was it naturally kind of down the road it happened?
That's a good question. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad is an entrepreneur, a very self-made millionaire. He grew up super poor and completely built this amazing company that he still owns to this day. He refuses to quit. Pretty sure I'm going to be like that when I'm 76. So I always saw that growing up, and I saw him building this business. And so I think that part of me was always in there. And that was just just kind of a normal thing that I saw growing up. Sure. But at the same time, I was not planning to start a business at the time I started my own business. I was actually a stay-at-home mom of 2 little kids. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at the time. And I mostly was just needing something to do because I spent a lot of time going to Target with my 2 little kids. I had nothing else to do. And so I would go to Target because it was, and I think moms of toddlers will, if they're listening to this, I don't know if you have moms of toddlers who listen to your show, but they'll relate to this because when you have toddlers at home, you're just desperate to get out of the house and do something. So my thing was to go to Target or go to the mall where there was a play place. And there was also shopping, and I was shopping a lot and spending a lot. And I'm sure you can imagine, that was not great for our budget.
Target's the worst, by the way. I just went to go get laundry detergent and spent $150. That was not just on laundry detergent.
But I bet it was the cute laundry detergent, right? Because everything at Target is cute.
I do like the store. It's clean. I like the layout. It's a good thing, but it is a trap. It is a trap. You go there to buy one thing and all of a sudden you're walking out with like a new table. And I'm like, I have no idea how I bought this table, but I did. And that's what happens.
That is so true. I went just the other day too. The same thing happened to me. $200. I don't even know what I bought, but it was all cute. It's always cute. So yeah, my husband and I were fighting a lot about money, and I really needed to figure out something to do that was not going to Target every day, that sort of filled this creative side of me or whatever, like just something to do. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll start a blog. And, I'd kind of heard that there was this thing called blogs out there. And so I, went on Blogspot, which is Blogger, I think that's blogger.com, whatever, went on Blogspot, started my living well, spending less .blogspot.com domain, and worst domain name ever. It was so long that it didn't fit on anything. And I started blogging, and I right away, it was one of those things where I wasn't intended to be a business. It wasn't intended to be anything else than something to do with my time. But as soon as I sort of entered this world of blogs and bloggers and blogging that I had never really been part of before, I was like, oh my gosh, people are making money doing this. Yeah. Like, honey, did you know that you could make money on a blog? He's like, no, you cannot make money on a blog. I was like, yeah, I think I can. I think I could do this. Like, if other people are doing this, I can do it too. There's nothing that would stop me from doing this. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I am going to make enough money blogging so that you can quit your job. My husband hated his job. He was an aerospace engineer. So it wasn't like he was, not making good money. He was making great money. He just hated it. It was very smart, but it was completely soul sucking. And so he was like, okay, great. Patted me on the head and said, yeah, that's great, honey. I'm sure you'll be really successful. And, I started blogging, and that's what I did. I tried, I read every single book I could, every article, everything I could possibly get my hands on about how to make money blogging and how to grow your traffic and become more successful. And it took me 2.5 years, but I did eventually make enough money through my blog that my husband was able to quit his job. And then he quit his job. And literally the next month, we had kind of set this threshold for what we felt like we could afford for him to quit. And he quit his job. And the next month, when I was able to focus 100% of my energy on growing the blog, I tripled my income and have never looked back since. So
that's
it was
crazy.
Really crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
First of all, there's so many directions we can go with this. Number one, I don't understand blogging. I have a client who's also a blogger, and I still don't get it. And she tries to explain it to me, and I'm like, what? Because first of all, I can't write at all. And so it's
just podcasting, except with words and not talking.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So
content creation.
I feel like with business and content creation and all these things, I feel like the 2-year mark, there's something magical about the 2-year mark. Putting out consistent content for 2 years, and all of a sudden, for how long was nobody even watching or reading?
For a pretty long time. And I was busy just trying to do all the things and read all the books. And Darren Rouse, do you know who that is? Pro blogger. He had a book called The Pro Blogger, I think it was called. And I read that book. Oh my gosh, I must have read it 50 times in the first 6 months I was blogging, just over and over and over again. Every time my husband looked at me, he's like, are you reading that stupid book again? And I was, because that was the voice in my head that kept telling me, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And so I was trying to figure out SEO, which is search engine optimization for those of you who don't know, and just social media and all of these different things. And I was applying them all, but I wasn't getting a lot of traction, but I was still writing. I was creating the content. I was putting it out there and I had maybe 4 readers. And then after I think I had been blogging for about 6 or 7 months, I had kind of this moment where they say like, it's better to be lucky than good. And so what happened for me is I had been, working so hard on SEO and writing all this great content and making sure that it was optimized for search engine results. And one of the things that I had been writing a lot about was coupons and how to coupon, because my blog was living while spending less. And my tagline at the time when I started was, the less I spend on food, the more I could spend on shoes. And
I love it. That's great. Don't tell my girlfriend that
my husband had put me on this budget, and I figured if I was spending less on groceries, there'd be more money for Target and all the other things that I wanted to buy. That's where I really learned budgeting. And so I was writing a lot about coupons and how to coupon and how to start couponing and this extreme couponing thing that wasn't actually a thing yet. But then this show came out on TLC. You probably remember it. It was called Extreme Couponing. Yeah. And it was huge for a very short time. But right at that time, everybody started searching for how to use coupons and how to start extreme couponing. And I had written a lot about that, and I had optimized it all for SEO, and I started showing up number one above the Extreme Couponing show, like with my site.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it was amazing. So all of a sudden I started getting all this traffic and I started getting all this ad revenue, and it was like so cool to go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like you really can make money doing this stuff. And it was this huge rise really quickly. And then every rise has a crash. And so the sort of big buzz of over extreme couponing came and went pretty fast. And all of a sudden it was done, and traffic started going down, and there was a lot more competition because everybody started writing about couponing. And so I had this kind of 3 or 4 months of like glory days where I thought blogging was easy money. And then it all went down, and I had to then really figure out how to be an entrepreneur. So I sort of got a taste of success fairly early, I think probably like month 7 or 8 of blogging. But then it all kind of came crashing down. And that's when I feel like was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it showed me that success was possible. Like all of the stuff that I was doing, it paid off. And yet it also showed me like it's not just you can't just count on a one-hit wonder. It has to be sustainable. So how do you make a sustainable business, not just this one-hit thing? Yeah. And that's what I've been growing ever since.
I love all of that, and so many good takeaways from that, right? Persistency, consistency, just even though there might not be an audience there today, like just keep putting out the content you believe in. Cause I'm a big believer, and I probably say this way too often now, but there was a guy on my show named Preston Smiles, he's right over my shoulder. And he talks about how at any given moment, there's 75,000 people that need to hear your message. In the world. And that's based off of sheer numbers. Like it's a scientific fact. And so just keep putting it out, and they'll find you at the right time. And that's what happened, right? So like you had that little boost, and it kind of put you in a stratosphere. It gave you a taste. It says, oh my gosh, this is possible. This is doable. There's a chance that I'm not just going to be the stay-at-home mom. I'm going to start producing an income for this family. And guess what, dude? You're going to retire, And so that's that's amazing stuff. But, I've read a little bit of your journey, right? And I normally don't do that beforehand, but I read a little bit of your journey because on your website, of course, your website layout's really incredible, and your timeline and all these things. But there's something about pushing through those rock bottom moments. And I believe that that's something that's learned in life, and it's usually learned during our terrible times. So are you able to share what happened in your life that kind of taught you how to push through that adversity?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in my early 20s, I was a senior in college, and I got really, really depressed. And there were a couple factors that were weighing into that. I was married unhappily. I got married real young. Wow. And was not my best yes. And so things were not going great. I had 2 of my brothers were living with me at the time. One was in college with me, and then another one was in high school, and I was his legal guardian. So that was very stressful, especially given that our marriage was not great. Yeah. And trying to manage a full course load and work full time. And then on top of that, I had this kind of random conversation with my dad one day, and he happened to mention that this man who had been the husband of a babysitter that we used to have when we were younger had passed away. And he just sort of mentioned it in passing. And that just triggered, like, started having nightmares and flashbacks, because what I started remembering was that this man had actually sexually abused me when I was a kid for 4 years. And I had completely just blocked it all out, which I guess that's normal if somebody dies, that for you to start having memories or something like that. And so all this stuff sort of was happening all at once, and I just completely melted down. I think it was also didn't help that I was taking a lot of existential philosophy and I think religion courses at the same time.
Yeah, it was like the opposite
combo
of the perfect storm, right? Or it was the perfect storm, yeah.
Yes, the perfect existential crisis was what I had. And I pretty much I couldn't deal with the memories, the flashbacks. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't eating. I lost probably 30 pounds in over the course of a couple of months and looked really bad. And I finally just came to this like realization or determination that God didn't exist, and that if there was, in the absence of God, and I had grown up in a pretty religious family and household, and so God was very central to that, and that without God, life had no meaning, so I should just kill myself. And so I started making plans to commit suicide. And that's so what I learned was that I was really bad at suicide. And but I
Thank
did.
God.
Right. Thank God. But I ended up in the psychiatric hospital, and the psychiatric hospital system is so crazy with insurance, and you get in, and then your insurance runs out, and they release you, but you're not better. And so I started kind of this whole cycle that went on for a couple of years, and many suicide attempts. My worst suicide attempt, I ended up in a coma on life support. My heart stopped in the ambulance, and the doctors gave me a 10% chance of waking up. And so it was done. And really, for all intents and purposes, I shouldn't be here right now. And that's, I don't think at the time I really understood the gravity of what was happening. I was still so depressed. It was in the middle of the depression. It wasn't like that was my rock bottom moment where I thought, okay, I'm going to turn my life around now. I still had so much further to go. But when I look back now at that moment, knowing, that I'm here for a reason. I didn't die. I had no chance of living. The doctors told my family to say goodbye. And, but yet I'm still here. So I'm clearly meant for something.
So let's talk about so many of those things, because I think, I always say, and I think I even said this on your show, like, everybody has a story. This just happens to be my story. And it's easy to say that when you're past a lot of that, right? So like, I've moved past a lot of stuff I've been through, and like, that's just now my story. You've moved past this, and you say a lot of these things with ease. Like, you're just like, oh yeah, I was sexually molested, and then I was in a psychiatric ward. I tried to commit suicide 5 times. I was on life support. Like, for you to say that, like, that's like, there's a lot there, right? There's a lot that you had to work through. And there's a lot of people that have been through those things who haven't even begun the process of working through that, so they then can create their perfect life. So what was a couple of the things you started to do to move out of that, so then you can get to the point now where you're living your perfect life?
Yeah. Well, I don't like the word perfect, because that makes it sound like I went through these bad things, and then all of a sudden I turned around and now my life is great and nothing ever goes wrong. Cause I feel like that's a misnomer too. That's not exactly how it works for things go wrong on a daily basis. And I still have struggles, not the same struggles, but, there's always going to be something. Yeah. And so, there's no one moment that was the turnaround point for me, or the one moment where, like, I had this great aha, and all of a sudden things started getting better. I did hit bottom, after my 5th suicide attempt. They started doing electroshock therapy on me, which is horrific.
What?
I mean, most people don't know that they still even do.
I had no idea. I thought that wasn't even a thing.
It's still a thing. It's a complete last resort. And I had electroshock therapy for, I don't know, probably 3 months. It's that part of my life is very fuzzy because it really messes with your memory.
Yeah.
And, and then finally they just kind of gave up. And so they sent me home to die, and said, there's nothing else. The doctors basically said, there's nothing else we can do for you. You've had electroshock therapy. It's not helping. Nothing's helping. And,
Ruth, this is just crazy. Like, I'm like sitting here like, crazy. I had no idea. And like, even though I read your, like, this is just insane. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just had to say something.
Okay. I know. And I forget sometimes that it is so, like, I think what you said was so true. Like, you move past it. And at the time, first of all, when you're in the psychiatric hospital or when you're in that place, you don't see any hope for anything ever. Yeah. And I could never even imagine my life being anything other than the complete catastrophe that I had created out of it. Because then you start to like mess up so bad. I mean, and I was a mess. I was cutting and then burning my arms and legs and needing to get skin grafts and all sorts of stuff. Like, I was a complete and utter mess. I was purposely trying to do as many dangerous and destructive things as I could. I bought a tent and camped my way down the West Coast and ended up living with some volatile lesbians in the middle of Arizona. We went to Mexico and got into a lot of trouble in Mexico. And then I was just like sex, drugs, whatever, whatever I could do that was dangerous. That's what I was doing. I didn't want to feel, I didn't want to do anything. I stopped paying any bills for like 2.5 years and just kind of abdicated all responsibility for anything in my life. And so pretty much once you like go to those kind of extremes, and then I had nothing left. So I got released from the hospital that last time. And it was sort of one of those moments where I was like, there's nothing left. And I ended up going to my dad's house. And it wasn't because my dad super wanted me there. He definitely did not want me there, but nobody else would take me. And he was, wasn't going to turn his back on his daughter. And even though he really was not super excited about me being there. And I mostly laid in bed for probably a month, 2 months, just laid in bed every day, wouldn't get out of bed. And finally he like could not take it anymore. And he begged me to just go, like, he's like, I'm going to get you a gym membership. Please just go to the gym like 3 times a week. If you go, and that was when cell phones were pretty new. And I really wanted a cell phone to talk to my mental hospital friends. And so he's like, if you go to the gym 3 times a week, just 30 minutes each time, I will get you a cell phone. And so I'm like, okay, well, my dad is, like an entrepreneur through it.
Yeah. Everything's a deal, right? Everything's got to be this for that. Yeah, totally.
Yes. So that's what I did. And I would go to the gym for those 30 minutes, walk on the treadmill and go back to bed. But slowly, like so slowly, probably another like month or 2 months, it did start like making a little bit of difference. And then I thought, okay, like maybe I need to do something to help myself. And so I called a therapist and said, I have just spent the last 2.5 years talking about every bad thing that's ever happened to me. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't even know how to live at this point. And I just need help, like putting my life back together. And so I started going to see her 3 times a week. And she was the one who just helped me put one foot in front of the other. And when you talk about like what was the thing that changed, it was literally taking the smallest steps, just one tiny step and then another tiny step and then another tiny step. It was figuring out like how to go to the grocery store without having a panic attack. It was, figuring out how to have friends again, because I had lost all my friends, my family, depressed people. And I don't blame them. Depressed people are not fun to be around. And I was not a fun person. It wasn't like I was like life of the party. I was Debbie Downer all the way. So it was crazy, and it took probably a couple years. But I ended up, getting a job, going back to school, finishing my degree, ended up going to law school, which didn't work out for me, but that was okay. And just sort of every little step led to the next step.
Yeah.
And that was really what I think when you talk about now as an entrepreneur and, when things happen, it's always for a reason. And I believe that every step that we take leads us to the next one. And every mistake that we make, that hard thing that happens is an opportunity for growth, and which is kind of the whole point of your podcast. And that's sort of how it worked out in my life too.
Yeah. And I really like, you said something there where when you called the therapist and you said, I've spent the last 2.5 years talking about every single bad thing that happened to me. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to talk about how do I move forward. And that's what I talk about. Like that's my message, right? Like it's like, It doesn't matter where you come from. What matters is the choices you make today, right? So the things that happen to you are important for a number of reasons, but they can't define you. They can't be what happens to you going forward. Are there ever moments now, I think about depression, and I think about people who have attempted suicide, and this is probably my own fault, but I almost lump them in with people who have been addicts at some point, and how that there's a potential relapse. Do you ever feel moments like that now?
I have moments where I do feel down. But I think I am also so aware, like acutely aware of what the warning signs are. And I'm also really good at self-care and knowing how to take care of myself and how to make sure that when I do feel myself going down a bad path, that I immediately, do take the steps to circumvent that. And so it has not been an issue. I've been depression free for, 18 years, and I've been medication free for 18 years. So that is definitely not a concern, but it's always something, I guess saying it's like kind of being like an addict is sort of the same thing. And not totally, but in the same way, like once you're an alcoholic, you'll always have to be aware of not putting yourself in that situation. And, I think too, going back to what you said about not dwelling on the past, there is something, and I don't know if it's the system that's messed up or psychiatry that's messed up, but it's not that you shouldn't ever talk about the bad things that happen to you. You do have to process them and like sort of work through them a little bit. But there's also a point where I think people can start to wallow in them or dwell on them so much that it prevents you from moving forward. You become stuck in the past instead of realizing that, yes, these bad things happen to me and that sucks, but I still have control over what I decide to do in the future. I still have control over how I'm going to respond to that. I don't have to let that be the one thing that defines my entire life or holds me back for my entire life. And I feel like that's really the biggest thing. And maybe the reason why I don't struggle with depression anymore is because I don't have like flash. I think that's also why I can talk about it so easily. I don't struggle with feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be triggered because I had trauma when I was a kid. Like that's just not it. That happened in the past. That does not define who I am right now.
Hey, yeah. And yes, 100%. Yes. Like it is something that I see so many people, it becomes their story. It becomes who they are, instead of just things they've been through. And like, that's kind of what happened with my mom. It became, the things that hurt her became her versus just things that hurt her. And I think that is something that is really kind of the difference, right? So you have to change that mindset and move forward. So the cool part is like, you're now have created this entire massive company around what you're building now, and you're helping other people do the same thing with blogging, and now you're writing a new book, and you have the podcast that's still fairly new, right? That was episode 30, right?
Yeah, the podcast is new. I started in April.
Yeah, which is incredible. It's a great show, by the way. Go check it out, the Do It Scared podcast. Just an amazing. You do an amazing job as a host. And I think I said that to you when you interviewed me. Like, it's just really, really good. It's very natural to have a conversation with you. So definitely go check out that podcast. But what does Do It Scared mean to you?
So Do It Scared is sort of been my motto in life, in my adult life, ever since sort of overcoming depression. And it's really this idea that courage doesn't mean that we're never scared. Courage is taking action anyway, despite our fear. And I think there's so many things in life that scare me. There's so many things in life that scare other people. Everybody has their own fears, and it manifests itself in many different ways in people's lives. But the only way to overcome that fear is to take action, even in the face of fear, to know that it's okay to be scared, but it's not okay to let that fear hold you back. And that's the theme of the podcast, overcoming kind of the same, similar themes to what you have, but really about facing your fears, overcoming adversity, and then beyond that, creating a life that you love. Because I think that's the flip side of that. You have to not only face your fears, but also actively work at going after your big goals and dreams and creating this life that you love.
No, for sure. And I think the reality is, and I think what I shared on your podcast is I'm scared every day to do something. And like, that's just the reality. Like, it doesn't matter how great it seems on the outside. There's still things that these people that you idolize and have put on a pedestal, they're scared too. And there's things that somebody who, everything you're touching now is turning into a success, but I'm sure you're still scared. I'm sure you're scared to release the next book, right? So
absolutely.
So
I want to say that that's not true. That's
Ruth,
what it looks like.
Give yourself some credit.
No, but that is what it looks like from the outside and looking in. And that's always how it looks when you're looking at successful people going, oh my gosh, of course they're not scared. Everything they touch turns to gold. They've got all these things and they're so successful and whatever. Like, first of all, I fail on a daily basis. I'm constantly trying things that aren't working out. You just don't see those things as much, probably because they failed instead of being successful. And I think I really feel that if you are not failing, you are not trying hard enough. And so if you're like, yeah, I'm great. I haven't had any screw ups lately. Well, then it means that you're not putting yourself out there enough, because failure is the key to success.
I love it. So what's the last thing you did, even though you were terrified to do it?
Well, let's see. Right now, I will say it hasn't actually happened yet, so I haven't done it yet. But right now, we are planning a book tour for the new book in the new year, which I have never done before, and I'm actually pretty terrified of, because I'm super introverted and kind of socially awkward. I'm great on a podcast in person. I feel like I'm way more socially awkward, and so it's like a deal to plan this whole thing. And there's this part of me inside where I keep thinking, oh my gosh, is this too much? Am I doing something that's crazy? That's crazy. Like, is this crazy? Is this too big? Am I not ready yet for this? Yeah. I don't feel like I'm ready. Maybe my audience is ready. Maybe what if people don't show up to this thing? Like, that's always the fear, right? You have this book tour and you have events in 10 cities and then nobody shows up. What if nobody shows up? And that would be my deepest fear. In the book, I actually my new book that's coming out next year, I talk about 7 different fear archetypes. And so my archetype is the outcast, which basically means I fear rejection more than anything else. And so it is like tapping into every single one of my deepest fears of rejection and being rejected by other people. But
yeah. That's huge.
Keep pushing forward.
Which I'm excited, because part of this book tour potentially will bring you through Reading during Growth and Movement Live. So fingers crossed that we can make that work. Because, as we spoke about off the record last time, and now it's on the record because this is on the podcast. We want you to be a movement maker within Growth and Movement Live because of the things that you're doing in the world. And that's what being a movement maker is all about. So if it works out, awesome. And we'll make sure some way, shape, or form, even if you're doing it in Philly and not Reading, you will have an audience there. So the fear of not doing something there would be
we are doing something in, I think that's on the list. Philadelphia is on the list.
It's a pretty big city. I think you almost have to New York, Philly, maybe down to Baltimore. I don't know where you go after that, but yeah, so that's exciting. That I get it. Like I live in that same fear and everything like that, So that's super crazy. And as you know, with podcasts, we have this opportunity to have amazing conversations with successful people, however you want to define success. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success?
Oh, that is a good question. My definition of success is being excited to wake up in the morning and do whatever it is that you're going to do. And I wake up excited every single day. So three things that I do every day. Every day I get up very early, like stupidly early. Often, always by 4 a.m. Lately I've been getting up at 3:30. I am like up before anybody else in the whole entire world. And
That's
I
crazy.
love it.
That's crazy. Yeah, and you're crazy. On the East Coast, so like the West Coast is going to bed and you're getting up.
I know. And I love that because I've lived over on the West Coast multiple times. In fact, we were there. I grew up on the West Coast and we were there for a year, and then I was there again this summer, and I hate it. Even when I get up at 3:30, I wake up feeling like I'm behind because there's other people that are awake before me. I like to be the first one up in the entire world. And, which I realize it's not the entire world, but at least the entire country.
That's right.
And, let's see. Second thing that I always do is plan my day. And I have this worksheet that goes along with my planner. It's called the Daily Do It worksheet. And it's just a sticky note that goes in there, but it prioritizes your day into must do, should do, and would like to do items, A, B, and C tasks. And it's so crucial to do that because a lot of people will use to-do lists, but the problem with a regular to-do list is that it does not prioritize your stuff. And so what do? If we have a to-do list, we will automatically pick the easiest thing to do on the list or the thing that's the most fun, but not necessarily the most important thing. So I always take the time to plan out my day and do the most important thing first. And let's see, the third thing would be then I do content creation in the morning. So getting up early is before anybody else in the world. I don't check email. I don't do social media. The first thing that I do after planning out my day and getting my cup of coffee is I spend at least 90 minutes to 2 hours just writing something, whatever it is. I have lots of different endeavors going on. So I'm either creating products or I'm writing blog posts or I'm writing podcast episodes or whatever it is.
That's awesome. I love all of that. So my next question for you is, what makes you happy?
Well, so many things make me happy. I feel like everything makes me happy, but I love what I do. I love the opportunity that I have to have such an impact on people's lives. And we've seen just the most amazing success stories through Elite Blog Academy and the bloggers that I've mentored in that community of just so many people who have built up these 6- and 7-figure businesses from zero. I mean, there's nothing cooler than knowing that you've actually changed the course of somebody's whole entire life and family. And so that's pretty amazing. Some of the other things that I've gotten to do with my business are, we've built children's centers in Bolivia, and now we're building one in the Dominican Republic, which will be going to open in March. We helped build a school in Africa. So just the opportunity to do some really cool things in the world has been amazing. That makes me very happy. And I don't know, I mean, my kids make me happy most of the time. Sometimes they drive me crazy, but overall, they make me happy. My husband makes me happy.
That's great. And so the reason I asked that question like that is that what I've realized over 100+ of these conversations is that so often before we reach what we thought was success, whether we're chasing money or a woman or man or the nice car, the nice house, whatever, we then realize all what success is once we reach success is that it's just happiness, right? So when you think about the first things you said, it was, you get to wake up and do the thing you want to do every single day, right? Yeah. You get to help people launch these blogs and make money doing blogs. That's your success. That's your happiness. And the two go hand in hand. And so sometimes we miss that boat because we want to chase that dollar sign or whatever the world tells us we should be chasing. And it's completely false. So that's why I asked it that way. And I just wanted to see if it kind of laid in line with that. So I wrap up all these shows with 5 rapid fire questions. But before we get there, where do people find you? How do they connect with you? What's all that good stuff?
Yeah. So it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for home and life solutions to help you spend less time on the things that you have to do, so there's more time for the things that you want to do, you can find all that at livingwellspendingless.com. if you're interested in creating a successful and profitable online business, check me out at eliteblogacademy.com. If you want just motivation and inspiration, you can check out the Do It Scared podcast. Or if you need some way of managing your entire life and your schedule, check out the Living Well Planner at livingwellplanner.com. And if all of that sounds way too confusing, you can just find it all at ruthsoukup.com, which is sort of our umbrella site that holds everything else.
Nice. I love all that stuff. So we'll link that up in the show notes. But like I said, I love what you're doing. It's completely amazing. And after I've heard the story, it's extremely inspirational. So thank you so much. So now we're going to get into the 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun.
Nervous. I'm so long-winded though.
You're
I'm
good.
not good at rapid fire.
You're good. So here's the thing. So some are fun. Some are serious. I just ask you this. Answer within one word or at the most one sentence.
Okay.
So your long-windedness. We'll see. By the way,
be hard.
Nobody ever sticks to that rule ever, especially the last 2, they go on forever. So the first one it's a 2-parter. There's 2 answers to it. What's your favorite and your least favorite word?
Do people know how to answer this question?
Yes, it's actually usually pretty quick.
Really? I don't have a favorite or a least favorite word. I have my COO, the only thing I can think of right now is her least favorite word is moist, and she freaks out when anybody says moist, but I don't have any words like that. So I'm going to pick her.
Is there a word you say the most?
No, I don't know.
That's crazy. That's the first time I never got an answer.
First person that can't answer that question. Oh my gosh, I'm failing the rapid fire.
Well, you still have 4 more that you can pass.
Maybe awesome. I think I say awesome a lot.
Awesome's a good word though.
So there you go.
Yeah, I don't even know if I could. I ask that question all the time and I've never thought about it. So now I'm going to have to think about it after this interview because I have no idea. The second one is, what is your favorite smell?
Oh, fresh baked chocolate chip cookies.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. If you could have dinner with anybody,
I have another one too, because this one is a real current one. Pumpkin scented candles during November.
Yes,
and October, because I live in Florida. We have no fall, so I make up for my lack of fall in pumpkin scented candles.
I love it. So I'm already on Christmas tree candles.
Are you?
Oh yeah. I'm obsessed with anything Christmas. So I live that all of October, November, and December. People think I'm crazy, but it's just what I do.
That is a little crazy, but hey.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of Halloween, like the dressing up thing. Just not my thing.
Yeah, it's not my thing either. I'm glad to hear you say that though, because I don't love Halloween at all. My kids are obsessed with it, especially my oldest daughter. She starts texting me pictures of the costumes that she wants like 6 months in advance. And I will literally buy her whatever costume she wants just so that we can stop having the conversation about Halloween costumes.
That's amazing.
I want to shoot myself every time.
That's amazing. If you could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, Sarah Blakely, hands down. She is hilarious. Do you follow her on Instagram?
I do.
I want to be her best friend.
I want her and her husband on my podcast.
Oh, they are amazing. If you get them on your podcast, will you please refer her to me and tell
100%.
her that I want to be her best friend?
Yes, 100%. So I've gotten close with her husband. I've gotten closer with her husband than I have with her. Like the one thing you'll see once you start to really kind of start reaching out to big names, like it's a process. Like I've been trying to get Andy Grammer on the show for probably about 9 or 10 months, like hardcore trying, but I've won it for over a year. I was this close not that long ago, almost did it in Baltimore live, and then the scheduling didn't work out. So it just takes time. So we'll get them, and then I'll make a connection, and we'll do all that stuff. So we'll be good. You'll be best friends within the year. Calling it.
That's awesome. Oh, best friends. Like, I really feel like if she knew me, we would just be BFFs.
I love it.
I sound like such a stalker right now.
She'll be on the show. I'm calling it right now. I'll help. I'll do whatever I can. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would it be?
Rules are for suckers.
I love that. I love that answer. Nobody's ever said that one. I love it. That's a really good one. Obviously, this podcast is called the Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single episode with this one question, which is in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh my goodness gracious. Are you kidding me?
I saved the best question for last.
Answer that in one sentence.
No, you have all the time in the world with this one. So you can go ahead.
So many moments of growth that it is really, really hard to pick just one. But I think For me, one of the biggest moments of growth was when I dropped out of law school. And what happened there is, so I told you that how I went through this crazy depression and finally pulled my life together, finished my degree. It was my senior year of college. So I dropped out of college and then went back to school, finished my degree, took the LSAT, got accepted to and it wasn't just a law program. It was a dual. I was going to get my JD and MBA at YOU in St. Louis, which is top 20 school. And, was a really big deal. And it was something that I had dreamt about doing my entire life. Like ever since I was a kid, I had always thought, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. And so that dream sort of got derailed for a while. And then I was back on it and I got to law school. And let me tell you, law school is nothing like Legally Blonde. For anybody listening right now, if you think that Legally Blonde is an accurate depiction, which I'm sad to admit that I was kind of obsessed with that movie because I wanted to go to law school so
Amazing.
bad. Nothing like it. And, but seriously, it was my motto has for a long time been rules are for suckers. And law school is pretty much all rules when you really think about it. I mean, everything that they do is rules, and I'm not really a great rule follower. And so I got there and I hated it. I hated the people. I hated the classes. I hated the content. I hated everything about it. The Socratic method, which sucks. I hated it so bad. And yet, so then I was there at law school, and thankfully 2 months before I started law school, I met the man who is now my husband, Chuck, and he quit his job to move cross country with me so that I could start law school. Everybody thought we were crazy. He's 20 years older than me. Like both my family, his friends, everybody told us we were both ruining our lives, but he moved with me. So he had quit his job to come cross country with me. And then I convinced him to buy a house in St. Louis so that we'd have a place to live for the next 4 years while I was doing this program. And then like a month later, I was so miserable that it was basically the closest I've ever come to getting depressed again, I think, since my really bad depression. And we went for a walk one Sunday afternoon in the park, and I was just miserable, and I'm talking about how much I hated it and how it sucked so bad, and I couldn't believe I had to do this for 4 years. And he stopped and he looked at me, like he faced me and he looked at me and he goes, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. And I looked at him and I was like, what? Like quitting at that point for me was not even an option. I'm not a quitter. And so that had never even occurred to me that might be an option. I was going to stick it through if it was going to kill me, and it probably would have killed me. And he looked at me and I was like, I can't quit. You just bought a house. Like you quit your job to come cross country with me. I can't quit. This is what I have to do. He's like, no, you don't have to do this. You can quit. I won't be mad at you. You can quit and you can leave this and do something else. And I went to the dean of students the next day, and I told her I was withdrawing. And she said, normally I would try to talk somebody out of this decision, but the look on your face, this is the happiest I've seen you all semester. And I know you're doing the right decision. It's the first time I've seen you look happy all semester. And so I dropped out, and it took me a long time. There was a long space between dropping out of law school and building this successful 7-figure business. But I truly believe that walking away from that path and failing miserable at that gave me every opportunity that I now have. So
I love it. You've got yourself a good man.
I do have a good man. He's a good dad too. He's the stay-at-home dad, and he does all the laundry and the grocery shopping. I mean, talk about amazing.
That's legit. Well, tell Chuck I said he's the man. You said his name was Chuck, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Chuck.
cool. But yeah, so Ruth, honestly, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with such openness. And just wow to what you've built and from where you came from, and just absolutely amazing. So keep doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see you hopefully at Growth Now Movement Live. If not, I'll try to get to one of the book signings.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to be here.
Thanks.
Hopefully we can do it again soon.
For sure. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.